A decade of turmoil, Syria's descent into chaos. The Syrian people rose up in 2011 as part of the Arab Spring. They demanded democracy and an end to decades of oppressive rule under Bashar al-Assad. What began as peaceful protests was met with brutal force by the Syrian government. This ignited a conflict that quickly spiraled into a devastating civil war. Over the past decade, Syria has witnessed unimaginable violence, displacement, and political fragmentation. The country has become a battleground for regional and international powers, further complicating the path to peace and stability. The Syrian conflict is a tragedy of immense proportions. It has resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths and the displacement of millions more. The once vibrant Syrian society is deeply fractured. The conflict has also had severe regional and global consequences. It has fueled terrorism, exacerbated the refugee crisis, and heightened geopolitical tensions. Understanding the Syrian conflict requires a nuanced approach. It involves examining the historical context, the root causes of the uprising, and the complex interplay of domestic and external actors. This essay will delve into the key events that have shaped Syria's political landscape over the past decade, highlighting the devastating consequences and the challenges that lie ahead. It will also shed light on the resilience of the Syrian people. Despite enduring unimaginable suffering, they continue to strive for a better future. The international community must work together to support a peaceful resolution to the conflict. It must provide humanitarian assistance to those The United States and its allies also intervened, providing limited support to some rebel factions while launching airstrikes against ISIS. The fractured state, political fragmentation in Syria. After a decade of conflict, Syria remains a deeply fractured state. The Assad regime, heavily backed by Russia and Iran, has regained control over much of the country. However, large swathes of territory remain outside its grasp, controlled by a patchwork of armed groups. In the northeast, a Kurdish-led autonomous administration governs areas liberated from ISIS with the support of the United States. The Turkish government views this Kurdish entity as a threat due to its links to the Kurdistan Workers' Party, designated as a terrorist organization by Turkey, the US, and the EU. Turkey has launched military incursions into northern Syria to counter the Kurdish presence. Meanwhile, in the northwest, a complex array of rebel groups operates, including some with links to al-Qaeda. Turkey backs several of these groups and maintains a military presence in the region. The situation in Idlib province, in particular, remains highly volatile. It is home to millions of internally displaced persons and has been the target of repeated government offensives. This fragmentation has created significant challenges for any prospects of a political solution. The Syrian government, backed by Russia, insists on a centralized state, with Assad remaining in power. In contrast, the opposition demands a political transition that sidelines Assad and implements democratic reforms. The human cost, a decade of suffering and displacement. The Syrian conflict has resulted in an unfathomable human tragedy. The United Nations estimates that over 500,000 people have been killed, with millions more injured. The conflict has generated the largest displacement crisis since World War II. Over 13 million Syrians have been forced to flee their homes. Within Syria, over 6.8 million people are internally displaced, many living in overcrowded and unsanitary conditions. These IDPs face immense challenges, including limited access to healthcare, education, and basic necessities. The COVID-19 pandemic has further exacerbated their vulnerability. Neighboring countries such as Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey have borne the brunt of the refugee exodus. They have struggled to cope with the influx, straining their resources and social fabric. The international community has pledged billions of dollars in humanitarian aid, but the needs continue to outstrip the response. Beyond the staggering numbers, the human cost of the conflict is immeasurable. Countless families have been torn apart. Children have been robbed of their childhoods. The psychological scars of war will continue to haunt generations to come. The international community must prioritize the protection of civilians, ensure accountability for war crimes, and provide comprehensive support to those affected by the conflict.